I have a theory that the Daglan made Prythian / Acco world, and that they're perpetuating the idea of the mother to further their own agenda. Maasverse spoilers, if you haven't read everything, you know the drill. Pause this video, save and come back. This is part 6 of my Origins of Prythian series, aka how the fuck did we get here? I'm going to tell you at least 10 reasons, and there will be more videos following, of why I think this is true. And I have proof. I brought the proof. Sit your booty down. If you haven't already watched, I have, like I said, 5 parts posted to this series already. And the previous 2 parts are important because part 4, I go through word marks / the holy tongue / the Asteri language and prove that they are all the same, which helps us then for part 5 prove the pouring of the cauldron into Prythian was done by the Daglan and likely at the hands of Vespers. I'm going to start by reminding everyone that the terms maid and starborn are basically interchangeable. What one can do, the other can do as well. We see that starborn are of a star, of an Asteri, and it is likely that made beings or made objects are also of an Asteri. And we can further that thought by assuming that a made world, one that is suitable for the Asteri, was a world that they created because their own world was dead to them. I had to write down notes because I'm trying to get through it very, very quickly. So if I'm doing this, all right, the first reference is to the bone carver, because any truths that I have derived from Prythian, I lean on the carver. I don't believe anything else anybody says, especially because we know that the history books and the legends are misrepresented. Once you read Crescent City, you learn that history has been changed by Selene. The bone carver says that the cauldron was created by melting iron into molten ore, and that the remaining ore was used to create the Book of Breathings at the same time by the same dark maker. The cauldron contains symbols, which I've equated to word marks and therefore the Asteri language. And we also know for fact that the Book of Breathings is written in Lashon HaKodesh, which is the holy tongue of the Asteri. We've seen Deanna in Throne of Glass melt Aelin's iron cuffs to molten ore. And we also know that Rhysand says in the legend books, the whole truth of it doesn't have to be accurate for part of it to make sense. He says that in legends that the Book of Breathings was written in the tongue of mighty beasts who feared the cauldron, yada, yada, yada. Well, we know from this and this that the Daglan were the mighty beasts. The Daglan were the ones who created the Book of Breathings. They have to be because it's written in their language. If we know that the Book of Breathings was written in the Asteri's holy tongue, and we know that the Book of Breathings was made at the same time that the cauldron was made, we can assume whoever made the Book of Breathings made the cauldron. It says Dark Maker, again, I'm assuming that this is Vespers, and she's just represented by this dark presence in the same way that there's like the ominous dark presence underneath of the Dusk Court, underneath Prythian. She's still a light Asteri, but there's a dark, ominous presence about it. Dark Maker. It's also interesting that no one of this world can wield or use the Book of Breathings, and likely the cauldron. Amryn can read the Book of Breathings. Not only can she read the Asteri tongue, she uses word marks, seemingly, in the Summer Court when they're taking the Book of Breathings, her and Feyre. She uses them as if they were a language all her own, while she puts her hand on the whirly swirl on the door where the Book of Breathings is held, half of it. And she's not of this world. Asteri / Asteri pet. We'll deep dive on Amryn later. Now I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, but we know I derail very easily. All right, these are my bits. These are my extra bits. The first thing I want to remind everyone is that myths in real life are of the gods. The term is mythology, and every one of these stories is likely fabricated or changed in some way, and this applies to fictional, mythical beings and stories as well. It's not far-fetched to assume that the Daglan made the myth of the mother, because the Daglan, which I've called equal to the Titans, the myth of the Titans exists. You know who was a mother? One of the Titans. I don't know. I just want to say that I personally feel like I don't need any more proof knowing that the Book of Breathings, which was made at the same time as the cauldron, is written in the Asteri language. You don't need any more proof than that. How can it be made at the same time, but the cauldron isn't made of the Asteri? I don't know, but I'll give you more reasons if you want them. I have lots. All right, number 1, Rigellus calls the Daglan the original masters of the Prythian Fae. Off of this thought, Cassian references that they're old gods / first gods are beings with almost no physical form. 1, the Asteri have no real physical form. They are borrowing, maybe, or fabricating their forms. That's verbatim in the books. Also, in real mythology, the Titans, again, this is linked to one of my favorite videos I've ever made, Ages of Man. I will link it. Basically correlates ancient beings in Maasverse to ancient beings in real world mythology. If the Daglan are equal to the Titans in real mythology were called old gods / first gods. And the Olympians who replaced them were called the new gods, i.e., the starborn Fae, Thea and Fionn, who replace the Titans. Side note, remember, anytime a new generation is replaced by the sun, it's a new generation of beings. And that's how we know that Fionn and Thea are marked as the Olympians. They're equal to the Olympians. We have that Cassian references them as the old gods and the first gods, and we have that Rigellus is like, we're the OG masters. We're the OG masters of the Fae. We wrote the book on it, to say the least. Let's talk about the tithe. The tithe is a function of the Daglan to sustain their need for more and more magic, which they take from the inhabitants of Prythian. Okay. Cheryl, my bestie Cheryl, she recently posted a really cool video about the differences between the tithes and the taxes in Acotar in real life. And one of the main things that differentiates them is that tithes are commonly associated with religion. Well, we know in Acotar that the priestesses who help operate the tithe in this instance, or in general, you could just imagine priestesses are operating a religious construct. That's not hard to imagine. And in this case, they're operating a religious construct that was created or at least enforced by the Daglan. So now the Daglan's tithe has turned into a function that the priestesses use to show devotion to the mother. I feel like that's odd. I feel like it's literally proving that the mother's relation to the Prythian Fae is the same that the Daglan's relation to the Prythian Fae. We perform tithes on the behalf of the religion, which is the mother in Prythian. And previously they performed tithes, which was based on the Daglan, who are now, I'm saying, promoting a myth that it's all for the mother. It's not. It's for them. So we also have the spring court tithe as well as rites and rituals like Calanmai, where it's about taking our magic and putting it back into the land, and then it's used to make renewed magic. This is a similar function that would benefit the Asteri. We learned that the Asteri found ways to amplify their magic because of the regenerative properties of the land. Well, putting your magic back into the land on behalf of the mother is exactly what the Daglan want you to do. Put your magic that is of us. We magify the land. We gave everything the magical qualities that it has. Now, when you're dead and dying, or when it's running out, or in a cycle so that we don't run out, we need to put our magic back into the land, regenerate it, amplify it, and put it back out into the world. It makes perfect sense. I like crack. All right, quickly. Let's go through some sketchy ass things that Bryce has said. 1, she said to Azrael when he's holding Truth Teller, she says, typical of your kind to want to use our weapons, but you don't know how to use them, or you can't even conceptualize their use. Again, she's referencing Truth Teller. We know that Truth Teller was remade with Gwydion in the bog during Fionn's sacrifice, but we don't know that it was made before. We have to assume that it was, because she's not talking about the making of Truth Teller in the bog, because Bryce was asleep then. And you could say, oh, she's all-knowing. No, she's not. She thought Fionn and Thea and Annalius were still alive. So she definitely doesn't know that Truth Teller has been remade in the bog. She's talking about some previous making of Truth Teller. And why then is she assuming that made weapons are her weapons, are their weapons? Because everything made in Prythian is made of the Daglan. So she also says, I can smell how much of what we created went unused. Which we know, obviously, that they amplified their magic, but this is speaking to me in like a throw-off sense of like, we created this world, we magified this world, everything that we created here went to waste because y'all are fucking too stupid to use the magic in the right way when we've been sleeping. We had pockets of our power. It doesn't say we had pockets of power. We had pockets of our power. The power of Prythian is their power. She says, I can sense them even now, slithering about, gnawing on the magic. My magic. Mother. Finally, just for this video, I have so many more things to say. This is probably going to be too long. Every single thing, literally name something in the comments and I can tell you how it points to the Daglan. And I'm just going to name a few things, a good few. Magic in general. I'm going to read off my list. Raw magic and shapeshifting, both of these things are light manipulation. These could also be linked to the Asteri power because we know that their original gods had basically no physical form. So I kind of wondered if shapeshifting could be like a Daglan quality that was passed down. We also have elemental magic. The Asterian Fae had elemental magic. We learned this from Emrys in Era of Fire. And what he says is that, of course, they had elemental magic. The original gods who had elemental magic gave it to them. Well, who are the Asterian Fae? They're starborn. They're of the Asteri. And if they're of the Asteri and they have elemental magic that they got from the gods, it's safe to say that there's elemental magic associated with the Asteri. So we have light manipulation, we have elemental magic of whatever kind. We also have court magic, the delineations of the courts. We have the 4 seasonal courts. Again, this can be connected to the elemental magic of the gods. But we also have that everything pays fealty to the harp, including the seasons. We'll come back to the other reasons I think that they made the different trove items, but we know that this is probably why the seasons are held the way they are. So 4 of the seasons are seasonal, but 4 of them are solar. And there's a couple interesting things. I've made a couple videos about this, but the solar quartz are very much so indicative of the real Thea in mythology, who is a Titaness. She has 3 children, Eos the dawn, Helios the day, and Selene the moon. And obviously this seems to correlate to Helena and Selene. A bunch of us have assumed that there's probably a 3rd missing child somewhere, but including Thea, this covers all 4 of the solar quartz. Day represents Helena, night / when the moon's out represents Selene, dawn is Eos, which is the missing child, and then we have dusk, which would represent Thea, because Thea inherits the land of dusk from Vespris. Vespris fed the land fed from her. The same exact thing happens to Thea. Thea is representative of dusk. The magic of the solar quartz, day quartz magic, is spell cleaving, which is another power of the harp. And then we also have dawn quartz magic is healing, which we see in Throne of Glass is definitely of an Asteri as well, starborn magic. And we know that because Bryce also says to us that first light is grade A healing magic. Grade A healing magic. Everything that is healing associated in Throne of Glass is from Asterian Fae. Everything in the southern continent related to healing in the Torah is directly connected to the Asterian Fae healers. Directly. I could show you the quotes. I probably put them in all the videos. Let's keep going. All made items can be wielded by a starborn. Why? Mating bonds. Mating bonds create powerful offspring, which then create excellent sustenance, as opposed to love matches, which do nothing. I would point out that priestesses, their job is to continue the cycle of magic, the turnover to the land, returning magic to the mother, praising the mother. Everything returns to the mother's womb, aka the earth, to be reused, reborn when the mother sees fit. Or is it just to be recycled into new magic? You liars. They're liars. You know, y'all know how I feel about a liar. I don't like a liar. I can't do it. I think it's awfully convenient that the Asteri / Daglan found a world would already do all of the things necessary to benefit them. Rites, mother rituals, returning of magic to the land. Perfectly, powerfully matched mates, but it has no direct correlation to the Asteri. Right. The Asteri made and poured the cauldron. They did everything. I'll be back for more. Tell me what you think in the comments. Are we gonna learn this in Acotar 6 and 7 and be like, but we're not, because we already figured it out because we're geniuses. I love you. Bye.